I've spoken at over 350 events on 5 continents. I've been on 2 TEDx stages. I have delivered keynotes and plenary sessions for audiences of up to 1,500 people. I've done talks for organizations like Merck, United Postal Service, and Raytheon. I've trained at Harvard's Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at Harvard, and I have a PhD in natural health with an emphasis in mind-body medicine. After 300 plus stages and countless conversations with event planners, fellow speakers, and attendees, I've learned what can make a keynote really land and some pitfalls that you can avoid by planning ahead of time. I can tell you what makes an event successful and how to make your keynote stand out so that the people in your audience get to work the next day with tools and useful techniques that they can use to be inspired, more productive, and better leaders. So in this video, I'm going to share everything I've learned from speaking at over 300 events, including 2 TEDx talks worldwide, that it takes some people years to figure out. I'm going to distill it all down for you right now in this video so that you can up your speaking game, whether you are just curious or you want to be on more stages or whether you want to hone the skills that you already have. I'm going to share with you everything that I know. So sit back and relax, enjoy, and here we go. So the first thing is, how does the audience feel? The audience is going to remember how you made them feel, sometimes more than what you taught them. And remembering also, what you do to one, you do to all. So if you start mocking somebody or making fun of someone in the audience, you've basically done that to the entire audience. If you high five someone and shake hands with one person in the audience, you have done that to the entire audience. So remember, the way you're presenting yourself to them and how they feel is going to carry you further than what you taught them. I'm a huge fan of PowerPoint. For the visual learners, I will forever have PowerPoint slides. I've had so many speakers say to me, the slides are dead. No, I'm a visual learner. I need to see something. And for the kinesthetic learners, they want to take pictures of the slide, and then they get on a flight like 6 months later and they're flipping through pictures and they're like, what the hell is that graph? We do that. It helps us remember. But also know that the content is not as important as how you make them feel. What is written on the slide is not going to go as far if you are not evoking some sort of emotional reaction. I love to do this with personal stories. I love to do this with humor. I have seen audiences shift so much when I start to talk about something that is personal and funny. I will often make fun of myself. So when I do my workshop on change and overcoming resistance to change, I give examples where I have failed changing because it makes me relatable. And as soon as you step up on stage as an expert, often the audience looks at you as infallible and as a perfect example of how they aren't. I'm here to tell you that's wrong. If you can share with the audience your faults and your foibles and the times that you've messed things up and how you overcame that, that is the inspiration and motivation. So often keynotes are just purely motivational. There might be, 5 things I learned from my time in Vietnam or, whatever the keynote is. So it is about evoking that feeling, especially when you're on that stage as that opening, closing, or lunchtime keynote. It is about evoking feelings. It is about connection with the audience. And there have been so many times where I'm speaking and humor actually catches me off guard. I will say something that maybe I didn't even plan to say. It's just off the top of my head. And there's an audience reaction of laughter. And when one group starts laughing, it rolls through the entire audience and it brings them back to this one cohesive group. So anything you can do to make the group cohesive, to be on that journey with you. This is everything from slowing your pacing down, taking a pause. Because when you take a purposeful pause, people think, oh, she's about to say something important. And I did this recently. I spoke out at University of California, Santa Barbara, UCSB, and I was using this as an example. And there was a kid in the front row, and he was coloring because they had coloring books on all the tables as something to occupy minds while I was speaking. And the kid was coloring, and I took a pause, and he looked up. And I started to laugh because that's exactly what I wanted to happen. Using your vocal tone, changing your pacing, changing your intonation, changing your tone and how you speak, and getting really intense sometimes. If you see you're starting to lose the audience, I like to take a pause. I like to change my pacing. I like to get louder or softer, because when they reach that change, it piques something in their consciousness. They realize, whoop, something's different, and they're going to start to pay attention. You know that you've got the room when you see heads nodding, when you see smiles, when you have people stopping and taking notes or taking a picture of the screen or take a picture of you, or some people get really upset if someone's recording them. I don't necessarily mind that as long as they're not going to go sell it someplace, but I want you to have that content. That's why I'm sharing that. I will absolutely give you my slides. I will absolutely let you take pictures of what you want to take pictures of. And there's nothing more off-putting to an audience. I was at a talk and someone went to take a picture of a slide and the guy goes, "Excuse me, you're not allowed to do that." And I was like, oh, there's a better way he could have phrased that. Please refer to my communication video if you want to learn better ways to phrase things. But he could have said, "I'm so sorry, I'm going to ask you not to do that. This is proprietary information." Instead, he got really cranky with this woman and then announced, "Could no one take pictures of my slides?" I thought the way he handled that was so inappropriate. And again, what you do to one, you do to all. He should have just stopped because the whole audience was lost. No one at that point was paying attention to him. He came off as a jerk. So remembering what you do to one and what you do to all, same thing. So one of the biggest compliments I get is my relatability, my down to earth, and the humor and personal stories that I share. Sure, I've got the credentials. I've got tons of letters behind my name, the PhD, the ACC, the LMT, the ACCH. I don't even know what they all are anymore. That's not necessarily why I get hired. Yes, it looks good on paper. I've got the credentials. I've got books. That makes it look really impressive. Ultimately, though, it's how I deliver the content. It is this way I'm talking to you right now. It's conversational. It's relatable. It's very down to earth. I do not speak down to people. I do not make myself out to be an expert in a way that makes them dumb. You have to connect to your audience. And it was so fascinating when I was doing my first TEDx talk. I got off stage and one of the other speakers went up and did the thing. And later he comes up to me and he goes, "How do you do that?" I had no context for what he was saying to me. And I said, what? How do I do what? And he goes, how do you do that with your face? And I said, oh my God, what am I doing with my face? And I said, I'm so sorry. I actually don't know what you're talking about. And he said, you change your face. Like your face is expressive and it moves. And I thought, how do you not do that? Maybe it's my acting background. And this is one of the other reasons I'm so comfortable on stage. I started acting in 5th grade, but it was fascinating because he didn't understand how my face moved. And to me, that was just so weird. That was just like, don't normal humans move their face? And when the videos of our TEDx talks were available, I, of course, watched mine and laughed and cried and was very proud of myself. And then I watched his, and it was 100% true. His face never changed. It's like he did the entire talk like this. And he had some really good stuff to share, but didn't really change his pacing and didn't really change his intonation and just had this as a facial expression. Oh, this is painful for me. Painful to not be expressive. What that does is that makes people feel comfortable. It makes you more human and relatable. It makes them feel like they're talking to a trusted friend as opposed to someone lecturing them about something. So pick a couple people and make eye contact. Here's a little speaker hack. If you are not comfortable looking out at the audience, look above their heads because they can't actually tell when they're sitting in the audience and you're not really making eye contact with people. The other thing I recommend to connect is have a plant in the audience. I don't mean like a ficus. I mean like someone there that you know, someone that you've connected with ahead of time that you feel like you have really good rapport with, and you can occasionally look to them and they'll probably be smiling and nodding. If you are starting to feel like you're losing the connection, look to someone who is giving you that feedback. It ups your energy. Smile. It's okay to make faces. Smile. It makes you seem relatable and warm. And that's what you want. You want to be able to connect on that level with the audience. If you are using abbreviations, if you are using acronyms, if you are using really technical language, do not assume everyone knows what that is, even if they're in the same industry as you. Because I have, I can't say I have a medical background, but I read a lot of medical books. And because of my background as a medical massage therapist, I know a lot of medical abbreviations. So I was at a meeting and they were talking about ED. And I'm thinking, why is this engineer talking about erectile dysfunction? And then I realized ED meant some technical thing. Now, granted, I wasn't in that field. I was just about to be the next speaker, but you never know who's going to be in your audience. Maybe there's spouses there. Maybe there's suppliers there. Use this truly as a time to educate, right? And enlighten the people that you are speaking to. You don't have to repeat every time what it is, but at least in parentheses, put it once what that abbreviation meant, or you're going to start to lose people if you get too technical. And if you're doing a really technical workshop, if you're doing a really technical talk, it can be really dry and you're going to start to lose people. So maybe halfway through, you take a fun break. You tell some amusing story about this thing that you're talking about, or you relate some study that is done in sort of a lighthearted way, because some of these talks can be really heavy and really deep, and you not having that emotional connection, you just spouting facts. Find a way to make it fun. You're going to have more of an audience connection. So balance is really important. We also don't want to make it a stand-up comedy routine, because I have a tendency to get pretty funny, and it's easy once you start to have the laughs to keep building on that and make it laugh, 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 laugh. The problem with that is you start to lose why you're there. You start to lose the content. So striking a balance between learning and humor, between personal stories and facts, it's about striking that balance. And you can craft the talk in your living room, and you can craft your talk on your computer, and you can craft your talk, but you have to get in front of people and do it. You have to have an audience. There's been so many times where I have rehearsed my talk, and then I get in front of an audience and something that I thought was going to be funny didn't land. That's the worst feeling. Or something that I don't think is at all funny, they start to laugh, and it catches me off guard. So it has to do with being present. It has to do with being present with your audience. And if you want to learn more about stress and presence, I have videos on that too. Check out my channel for more of that. But it is about striking that balance, and knowing your audience is incredibly important. I have learned that 911 dispatchers love really bawdy and kind of inappropriate humor. Same thing with HR professionals and school teachers, police officers, the people who you think would have this very serious outlook. They are around death and stress and, the horrors of life all the time. And they want to laugh. So don't feel like you have to make it dry because that's what they're expecting. Again, you've got to strike that balance. There's been times where I have gotten carried away with the humor and I've had to rein myself back in. There's also times where I strike that perfect balance and the story lands, and then I've got them, I throw in a fact or I throw in a study. It is really about reading the room. So let's talk about reading the room. So after 300 plus talks, worldwide, you really have to learn how your audience is responding to what you're saying. And I have done talks in other countries where I do not fully understand their humor, and I do not fully understand their audience style, let's say. I did a talk in South Africa. I know nothing about the South African culture, I will admit. I talked to a friend who had spent a lot of time there. She said they are very fun, happy people, but it has to be initiated. And what I learned as I was walking through the halls before this talk is someone would be walking towards me and they'd have a completely almost stern face. And then I would smile at them first. And they got this huge toothy grin. So I realized these people were reactors, not instigators, right? They had to be triggered by that. And the night before my keynote, I walked past the opening night event, and they had a silent disco going, where everybody's wearing headset and you can listen to whatever you want to listen to. There's typically like 3 or 4 channels. These people were having so much fun. It was a hell of a party. And I stood there for a second and I watched the joy. And so I opened my talk in order to build rapport with them immediately by saying, man, you guys like to party. I walked past your event last night and you were dancing and you were so filled with joy. And I was so bummed not to be there because I wanted to share that energy with you. Good for you. I'm going to have just as much fun with you today. And everybody whooped and laughed, and it was great. It was a perfect way to open that talk. They wanted to have fun. They were learning from me, and they wanted to have fun. One of the other things with that event that could have been a pitfall for me is I was talking about ways to be healthy. So I was talking about the 10 things to add and subtract for better health. And one of the things that I say to eliminate from your diet is GMOs. Well, at the time, that country had already eliminated GMOs. They did not allow GMOs in their food supply. So had I stood up there and said, everybody cut out GMOs, these are the GMOs, well, that would not have landed for them because their country didn't have GMOs. Lucky country. So it's important to research where you're going, know who you're speaking to, know the company, and really monitor the room to see how it's being read. When I was in my coaching training, we learned there are 3 levels of listening. Level 1 is I'm just sort of like listening from me, and yeah, I'm hearing what that person's saying. Level 2 is I'm not only listening to them, I'm listening to my own reaction inside of me. I'm listening to how their conversation is landing for me. What are my body cues telling me about what this person's feeling or thinking about? The 3rd level of listening was listening to them, listening to my inner thing, and reading the room. Is someone in the corner kind of starting to do this? Or do you see people fidgeting and looking at their watches? Or people kind of like, if I see people doing that, I will actually say, hey, we've been talking for a while. Let everyone stand up. Just put your arms up, stretch, stand up, change something, right? I also always give people permission. Not always. I often give people permission at the beginning. I say, look, if you need to get up and move, go ahead. If you need a bio break, go ahead. I do not take personally when someone gets up and leaves my talk. I could say, oh, they're not liking this and da da da. If you focus on that one person that left and it starts to drag you down, it's going to affect the entire energy of how you're presenting. It is going to completely throw you. You don't know why they're leaving. They just got a phone call. Their kid has to be breastfed. They have to go to the bathroom. Their sister's in labor. They have to go to another meeting. You don't know what's going on. And you can personalize that, but it's going to be a nightmare for you. Remember, there's other reasons why people have to leave your room. So don't take that personally. You can't. The other thing is you need to know the industry that you're speaking to, right? So when I did my very first talk, my very first like commercial talk, it was in New Orleans. It was many, many years ago. And it was for a group called APCO. And I had, up to that point, had really only spoken for lay people and locals and you're just sort of your everyday person. I hadn't done really like an association kind of thing. And as I was about to leave, my friend goes, what does APCO stand for anyway? And I suddenly went, oh, I should probably know that. And so I looked up APCO and it's like 911 dispatchers. It's emergency numbers. And I went, oh my God, that's going to be a very different talk than if I was speaking for somebody else. Because at the time, this was my workshop on stress. And I keep talking about how stress is in our minds and stress isn't real. You know, they are dealing with real stress. And so I called a girlfriend of mine who was a dispatcher at the time. And I'm like, dude, tell me everything. Tell me everything that you know about this profession, because I'm about to go speak to hundreds of you. And I was a doofus and didn't think to research first. That could have been a nightmare for me. Had I shown up there and not even know what industry I was speaking for, bad, Kathy, bad. You've got to know who your audience is. You've got to know the age range. You've got to ask those questions. What is their role in the company? I do a lot of speaking for something called ALA, Association of Legal Administrators. And they always say, you're not speaking to attorneys. You are speaking to the people that assist the attorneys, the receptionists, the paralegals, the legal secretaries, that kind of thing. Because so many people showed up assuming they were talking to attorneys. That is not what that group is. Ask questions. This is why they have event planners and a contact person for you. Use them. It's going to make their job easier. It's going to make your job easier. So get all the details ahead of time. What's the age range? What is their background? I swear a couple times in some of my talks, and I've done things with organizations where they say absolutely no bad words. And I have to completely redo how I do my talks. I don't say bad words, but you know, the occasional shit ends up in there. If I'm even allowed to say that on YouTube, I think I am. So know your room, read the room. If you see things starting to shift and move into a more negative space or what appears to be negative to you, switch your tone, tell a story, change your location on the stage, make a face. Because we all know how to do that. Quick intermission. If you are an event organizer, an HR director, or a conference planner, and you're looking for a keynote that really lands with your audience, that's the perfect combination of facts and learning and humor and relatability, your attendees will walk away with tools, tips, tricks they can use that day to improve themselves, to be better organizers, better leaders, better communicators, less stressed. Go ahead and click the link in the description below. It'll take you right to my website where we can book a call, where I can see how I can help you and your organization. Now, back to the content. So as you can imagine, I have worked with hundreds of event planners and organizers, and I got to tell you, their job is not easy. They are coordinating a lot of things. Whether they are an event planner full-time or they are just someone in that organization or company that this was sort of heaped onto of go organize this event, it takes a lot of coordination and a lot of planning. Speakers can be a pain in the ass. I have met speakers who I'm just stunned at how they treat their event planners. Here's the thing. My job is to make their job easy. What do we used to say in acting? I hit my mark. I know where my lighting is. I don't break the set. It kind of goes along with speaking as well, right? You show up on time, you turn in the things you need to turn in. If there's a problem, you ask a question, you make sure you have their cell phone. The second I land in a city, no matter how many days or hours it is before my talk, I text or email that person and say, I'm here. I just wanted to let you know. Check in. Keep really organized notes so that you can make your experience easier and their experience easier. I do a full one sheet paper of info for every single talk that I do. The date, where I'm going, is there airfare involved? Who's paying for what? Do I get to sell my books? I write down the airport I'm flying into, the hotel info. And then as I organize all that, I put it behind those pieces of paper with a paperclip in order. First is my parking at LAX, then is my airfare, then is the hotel, then is the info about the conference, and double check everything. Double check everything. Because there are times things change and they are incredibly busy and do not think to tell you. I showed up for a conference and it was in, I don't remember where it was, maybe South Dakota. It was a place I had not really spent much time. And I got in the hotel and I started to do work. And my husband finally said, have you even been outside? And I said, God, I actually haven't. And it was at this sort of like casino resort conference center sort of thing. So I thought, I got to get outside. So I left my room and I just thought I'd do a loop around the conference center. There was really no other place to go without a car. And I found there were people in there. And I went, I should stop in. Nothing was happening yet. And so I walked up and they were putting the binders together. And I said, hey, I'm your keynote tomorrow. And I introduced myself. And they said, so good to have you. And they said, do you want a binder of what's going on? And I said, yeah, I probably should. I said, I'll give it to you at the end. I don't need to keep this. I said, that would be appreciated. So I get up to my room. I throw the binder down. Doing my thing. I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. And my keynote was supposed to be 11:30. So I set my alarm. I had a little bit of a time change. So I thought, I'll get up and I'll do some work and then I'll get ready. I'll go to breakfast and, all these things. So I grab breakfast and I get back to my room and I don't have any hair and makeup done. I'm not dressed. And I suddenly thought, I should look through this binder. And so I start to flip through the binder and I get to the first page, day's schedule of events. And it says keynote, Kathy Gruver. 9 a.m. And I went, oh my God, they had changed the time of my keynote and not told me. It was 8:40. And I luckily had eaten. I threw on clothes. I didn't get my hair done. I threw it up in a clip. I had a little makeup on my face and I texted the organizer and said, oh my God, she at that point had texted me and said, where are you? I was supposed to be there at 8:30 for a tech check. At 8:40, I texted her back and said, I thought my keynote was 11:30. Did you change it? She goes, oh my God, did I not tell you? Check the website, check the app, check the binder. Make sure you are quadruple checking everything. I confirm this with the event organizers and they appreciate it, right? They want to know that you are responsible and you're going to be there. I have never to date, knock on wood, missed my own talk. I've come close a couple times and that was a big situation that could have been a nightmare for everybody. Right? So make sure you're double checking. Make sure that you consider that part of your job is to make the job of the event organizers easier. I showed up for one talk. And again, I've never missed my own talk. I'm always there early. And we were doing these little almost TEDx style, like 15 or 20 minute things. And I was the MC for part of it. I was not only doing a talk, but I was also introducing Rona Barrett, which I was very excited about. It was for a woman's day, a festival. And this speaker didn't show up and we're wondering where she is. And finally they got a hold of her and her flight was delayed. Okay. But rather than going straight to the venue from the airport, she demanded to go check into the hotel. She wanted to rest for a second. She needed to change her clothes. And she's basically sitting at the hotel when she needed to be here getting ready to do tech. She shows up to her talk 5 minutes late and can't get her PowerPoint to work for her 15-minute talk. And rather than just saying, you know what, screw it, and doing her talk, she basically strong-armed everybody into standing there waiting while somebody found her PowerPoint. She finally found it in an email. They finally got it uploaded on the computer. And as she's doing her talk, I'm looking at this PowerPoint and thinking, girl, you did not need to be showing that. Do your effing talk. Come on, man. She delayed the entire conference. Now, the organizer very easily could have said, you're out. But it wasn't a professional organizer. It was a bunch of like community people trying to do this. And then they went to everybody after her and said, could we cut your talk by 5 minutes? No. I was already cut down from originally a half an hour and da 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 da. And when they said, Kathy, you have 15 minutes, but is it all right if we make you 10? And I said, it is actually not all right. I said, I'm all about helping, but this woman hijacked the entire thing. And my talk now shouldn't suffer because she decided to put everybody behind. So with all due respect, I'm going to do my full 15 minutes because it's not my fault that this woman screwed up. And the organizer went, yeah, you know what? You're right. That's actually not fair. I am all about adjusting things. I have had conferences where the person before me goes long and they're trying to cut them off and they keep going, going, going. And they say, Kathy, oh my God, I want you to do your full time. And I say, you know what? Let me stop on the hour or let me stop. The one time that I did, I had to start late because the room wasn't set. It was probably one of my worst speaking experiences. I still have nightmares about it. The room wasn't set up. So we all show up and there's food on all the tables. They didn't clear it from lunch. They cleared every other room, but not mine. So literally I am down there removing dishes for this next thing. Everyone's pounding the door trying to get in. I was speaking about narcissism. It was a huge topic. The room was full and we started like 15 minutes late. And the organizer said, Kathy, please take your full time. Please take your extra 15 minutes. Well, the problem with that was the next speakers were not told that I was going to take my full 15 minutes. So they're in the back of the room telling me to stop. The next group's trying to get in. Communication, just like that. Communication completely broke down and ended up being a nightmare. The organizers eventually apologized to me and they said, we're so sorry we put you in that position. We actually talked to the other speakers who were pushing you because we had explained to them that you were going to take extra time, but they didn't want to give it to you. And the really frustrating thing was the first 5 minutes of their presentation was a video of travel stuff. It wasn't even content. It was just pretty pictures. So it was a huge frustration. You have to weigh the options of, are you going to take your full time or are you going to cut it short? Read the room, ask what the organizer would like. Say, I'm happy to cut it short a little bit if that will help them out, because that's how you get more gigs. I can tell you the woman that showed up late without her PowerPoint and delayed everything was never hired by that group again. That was pretty clear. And I do my best to, again, make the organizer's job easier. I do my best to make things flow quicker. And if it means I'm down on the floor bussing tables and pulling plates away, which they were so appreciative of, then that's what I'm going to do. That's your role as a speaker, not to sit in the green room and hope everybody just serves you. You can, but you're probably not going to get a great reputation. So be helpful, be useful, within boundaries, of course. Let's talk about emotions while you're speaking. So there are times during my talks that I tell emotional things about my life or about a client I had. I tell a story of a client that I lost to cancer. I will occasionally mention that I lost my own mother to cancer. I talk about bullying. I talk about a woman stepping up and really seeing me and completely changing my life. And depending on the state of mind I'm in and the conference that I'm at, I might exhibit a little bit of emotion. And I've had other speakers say, you never cry during your talk. I'm a crier. I mean, I'm not going to sob through the entire thing, but there have been moments where I've teared up sharing something really personal and really meaningful. And not to use it as a device, like don't cry on purpose to get a reaction, but it's those moments where I'm raw and sharing something vulnerable that makes me human, that the audience tends to react most, where I'm almost starting to get choked up and I look out and I see people right there with me. They're leaning in, maybe they're crying, maybe they have that look on their face. I have spoken for so many health and safety professionals or 911 dispatchers or firefighters or EMT or police officers, and they so often have this hard exterior because they have to, because of their job. And I look out and when I'm doing the mini meditation, I see people tearing up, or I'm talking about affirmations and I see someone start to write notes and almost sort of, have this very visceral reaction. And the first time I did a health and safety talk, it was the 8:00 time slot. It was a breakout session. It was in New Orleans and it was the last day of the conference after their big blowout party. And I thought, no one's coming to this at 8:00 in the morning. Come on. So I get there at 7:15. I get everything set up. I got my PowerPoint ready to go. My clicker works. Everything's charged. My microphone works. I'm ready to go. I'm just relaxing. And one person showed up and I went, great. And I was talking to this woman and I said, hey, thanks for being early. I said, if it's just you and me, we'll just talk for an hour. And she goes, oh my God, I'd love that. Well, I look down at my phone and I'm doing some stuff and I'm chatting with my husband and I look up and there's 20 people in the room. And I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. 8 a.m., last day of the conference, early New Orleans party. Cool. And I'm doing stuff and I look up again and there's 50 people in the room. And I went, oh, next thing you know, is standing room only. this room was absolutely filled with so many people that needed this stress reduction, so many people that needed to hear what I was going to say. And I looked out and it was a sea of men. I mean, I think there were only 5 women there. And because I can be really relatable and I was raised by my dad and I'm a huge sports fan, I don't approach stress as this woo-woo, airy-fairy, kumbaya kind of thing. I'm very down to earth. And like I said, maybe I'll swear a little bit because it makes me human and that's just how I talk. I'm from Pittsburgh. It's ingrained in me. And I'm doing this workshop and I'm watching the guys meditate and I'm watching them really get it. And I'm watching as we're talking about visualizing and as I'm talking about the stressors that I know they face and some of the stress that I've had in my life. And I'm watching them get it. I'm watching them lean in. I'm watching them nod. I'm watching them take notes. And there was one guy, big guy, completely tatted out, shaved head. He looked like a beast. I mean, like he looked like he could really take someone down if he wanted to. And he walks up to me and he put out this big paw of a hand and he shook my hand and he said, "I think you just saved me." And I was like, "Oh, wow, thank you." And he said, "I am so stressed. I'm so burned out. I'm health and safety in a prison system. I work 60 hours a week. I don't get breaks. It's a very high stress, high demand, violent environment." He said, and for the first time in years, that mini made me feel like I took a break. And he said, "Can I hug you?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah." And he gives me this big bear hug. Like he engulfed my entire body. I'm not a petite, I'm 5'8", and I'm not teeny. And he engulfed me and he had tears in his eyes. I'm not making this up. And he's like, "I think you just saved me. Thank you." I get feedback like that all the time. This is why I do what I do. I love making people laugh. I love the relatability. I could be on stage every day for the rest of my life. It's so my happy place. And it's those reactions that I realize the good work that I'm doing, because so often people don't know they need what I'm going to say until they hear it and go, "Holy crap, I am stressed." I've had people come up to me and say, "I was honestly considering suicide and then heard you and now I realize there's tools." They buy my books and I get letters in the mail, emails saying how much my books made a difference in their lives. This is why I do this. This is truly why I get on stage. And if you are a speaker and your intention is anything other than being of service to your audience, I want to just posit that maybe you're looking at it wrong. If you think you're going to get rich and you're going to have fame and notoriety by being a speaker, you can, and it comes from that place of wanting to be of service. I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. I don't care what you're speaking about. Even if you're just giving facts, if you're an engineer, if you're in accounting, if you're still being of service, you're still passing on information to people that need it. And if you want to be a really good keynote, you've got to have that emotional connection and you've got to stand up there completely bearing yourself to be of service for your audience, because then you're going to find that emotional connection. It's not just, "Look how cool I am." I've heard some incredibly famous people speak. I sat through Pitbull's keynote, Venus Williams, the woman at the Boston bombing who ran into the bombing to help instead of out like everyone else was doing. I've heard some incredibly important people speak. And there's always this vulnerability and this relatability and this just sort of connection that they're offering. It's not like, "Hey, I'm Pitbull, I'm famous." It's, I really have a story to share. And his story was one of the most moving I've ever heard. So bury yourself. Know that your audience is going through things and that you, in these moments, get to help. And that's going to make all the difference in your speaking. So in speaking of crafting your talk and rehearsing your talk, here is what I really advise you not to do. Do not print out your talk and try to memorize it. It's just going to be a recipe for disaster. This is not a play. No one is waiting for their cue line. No one's going to miss their line if you don't say your right line. Because what tends to happen, and I've seen this numerous times, if you've memorized your talk word for word as you go, you've memorized it word for word and you go, and you've basically forgot your next line. I don't know what your next line is. No one in the audience knows what your next line is. This is where PowerPoint is really great, because you can use PowerPoint as a cue to what the next subject is and you can keep yourself on track. Also, please do not turn around and read your PowerPoint word for word, the entire thing. You can turn and read and gesture, but make sure you're looking back to the audience. As soon as you break that connection and show everyone you're back, you've lost them. They're on their phone, they're talking to their neighbor, they're looking around, they're thinking about lunch, they're wondering how long it's going to be. I got the greatest compliment the last talk I gave just a week ago. Where was I? Minneapolis. This woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I did not look at my phone once. That's how engaging you are. That is the biggest compliment I could have gotten, because when you're sitting in an audience of 350 people and someone is talking kind of at you, really, it's really sometimes hard to stay focused. So monitor that, gauge that, make sure you are not trying to memorize your talk. And if you screw something up, that's okay. We'll talk about that in a second. So let's talk about screw ups. I could do a whole program just on the things that have gone wrong during talks. Maybe I will. It could be fun. I have fallen off the stage. I have gone to the wrong room and almost missed my own talk. I have had a coughing fit where you get that catch where you literally can't talk. And I'm standing on stage in the middle of a keynote going, I got snot running out of my nose. No one, the entire audience just kind of went, oh. No one offered me water. No one asked me if I needed anything. I had a talk recently where the speakers in my room were picking up the room next door, so you could hear me and the other speaker. That became comical. I've had my dress split. I have had tech not work, where I, in heels and a speaking dress, had to run off the stage all the way to the back of the auditorium to fix my computer, to run all the way back up. There are times that things go wrong. I'm still here to tell about it. You do not have to be perfect. You will not be perfect. And for those of you that grew up thinking that your self-worth and your ability to be loved was tied with being perfect, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm sorry, and you don't have to be perfect. I'm giving you permission not to be perfect. It's those screw-ups, it's those moments that make us human. And if you can make fun of yourself, if you can make a joke out of it. I showed up to my talk in Cuba and I accidentally went to the wrong room. I was in the middle of really horrible food poisoning. I thought for sure I was not going to make it through my talk without something coming out of some end. And it was terrifying. And I had it in my head. I was supposed to be in room D. I was supposed to be in room B. And I finally went to the organizer and I said, look, my PowerPoint's not loaded on this computer. And she goes, well, where are you? And I said, B. And she goes, well, you're supposed to be in B. And I went, ah. And I go running in and this booming voice goes, Dr. Gruver. And I went, yes, sir. He goes, you're tardy. And I said, well, I was on time. I was just in the wrong room. Let me get going. We pull up the PowerPoint. I do the thing. And in my rush to start this talk and not offend all these people that showed up to see this workshop, I had stepped up on a pizza box size thing that was behind the podium. I had to stay at the podium and use that mic because it was being translated. Being translated is a whole nother thing. But I stepped up on this little pizza box size thing and I was in such a rush, I didn't realize I had stepped up on it. So I said, thank you very much. And I go to step away from the podium and I actually fall off it. I go down. So my head is there and then my head is gone right out of the podium. And I hear the entire audience go, and I jumped up and went, thanks for having me. And I walked out. You've got to make fun of yourself. You've got to be comfortable enough in your skin to be okay when things like that happen, because it's going to. I had one talk where it was a book fair and they said, we'd like to have you in the main stage doing a talk about stress. You could sell your books. I said, great. So it was up in Sacramento where I had some in-laws at the time and I invited them and they were so excited to hear me speak and my niece helped me at my booth and, but this was a book fair. This was a book thing and no one was there to hear speakers. And so they put me in this auditorium that sat 800 people and no one showed up. My family, 5 people in the front row, fully empty auditorium. And I'm standing there and I'm going, well, I guess I'm doing this for my 5 family members. And one of the volunteers walks back in the thing and she kind of looks around. She goes, can I get you anything? And I said, could you find me 20 people? And she goes, okay, and walks out. And I thought, wait, did she hear what I said? What's going on? She goes to the break room where all the volunteers are resting in between their shifts. And she goes, come on, guys, we're going to hear a talk. And they go, all right. She brought 20 of the volunteers in. We scattered them throughout the auditorium. And my thinking was, this is going to suck. These people don't want to be here. They didn't choose to come hear me speak. It was so good. These people were so engaged. They were so ready to hear what I had to say. And one girl, she was young. She was, I think, just about to start college. She came up to me afterwards. She said, "Can I pick your brain? Like, I really want to get into psychology and I really want to like maybe speak someday." And we had the best conversation. Everything works out the way it's supposed to. And apparently that was the experience I was supposed to have with that. My family, my in-laws got to hear me speak for the first time. They learned some things. And I got to teach these 20 people who were young and just starting careers things that they had maybe never considered before. And I got to specifically help that one young lady maybe narrow down and choose her career choice. So you never know when the thing that went wrong is actually going to be the thing that's right. Things just happen. We deem whether it's positive or negative. So roll with it. You're not going to be perfect. And if you do walk away with a perfect talk, woo, don't expect it every time. Give yourself a pat on the back. Thank the organizer for an incredible experience and get ready to figure out what's going to happen the next time. One of the advantages I have as being a stress speaker, mainly a stress speaker, overcoming resistance to change, is people assume there's no solution to this. People assume this is just their lives, right? And when I start to give them solutions to things that they didn't even realize were problems, like those warning signs of stress, they didn't recognize that the headache was stress or that the jaw tension or all these things were actually indications that something's wrong. When you can educate them and say, here are solutions to this, sometimes they go, oh my God, I didn't even know that was a problem that I actually have. And so often there's that relatability to that. There is that recognition of, wow, I actually do say but a lot when I communicate, or I do say should a lot when I communicate. So giving them everything that you know on that stage is going to lead people to these realizations that you've helped them in a way that they didn't even think you could. Maybe they didn't realize how restful that meditation was going to be until they got halfway through the mini and went, my God, this is the first time I've ever felt relaxed. This is the first time I've ever been able to meditate without that stress overtaking me. This is a gift that you're giving the audience, is letting them know that there are solutions to their problems, even if they didn't realize it was a problem they had. And you start to see these knowing nods and this, yeah. I mean, I've had so many experiences where I look out in the audience and people are just like, yeah, or I'll say, how many people struggle with, or, another great way to engage the audience is to ask questions that people are going to say yes to. I do that with a to-do list thing. It can be very funny. Exercises they can do, the blue and red exercise that I use during my stress talks, getting people involved in things. I was just at a conference where the Keynote had cards on everybody's place in the lunch area. It was a huge conference. And she walked them through those exercises and had them write stuff down on the cards. And some people volunteered to share. It's a beautiful way to get the audience involved. Because again, when you do something to one, you do something to all. So go in with your solutions. There's bound to be somebody that has that as a problem, right? Or the organizer wouldn't have brought you in. Sometimes you're enlightening people in a way that you didn't even consider, you didn't even think was possible. So know that you were going in a place of helpfulness and service, and it's going to be a better talk. So let's talk about humor. So I was raised in a household with lots of laughter. My dad was hilarious. He was the first one to tell the bad joke of the week, to do a pun, to chime in for a funny quip, even with strangers on the street. And I grew up recognizing that that was something that was appealing, that people really liked my dad. And so I adopted that. And I think I also shot out naturally funny. I have really good comic timing. I tell really good stories. I remember every joke I ever heard. And once I tell one, it goes through the filing system in my brain and I tell a bunch. There's a misconception. I don't think many people do it anymore, but they used to say, start out with a joke, bring the audience to start with a joke. I just flew here. Boy, my arm's tired. This very like schlocky kind of 70s, 80s sort of thing. No one does that anymore. Don't start with a joke. You can start with an anecdote that will lead you into maybe what your background is or why you're doing this talk, but to literally do an actual joke tends to not work, especially depending on your audience. A lot of people aren't ready. They don't know you yet. You haven't developed that rapport probably so that you can start with something like that. There's been one conference once where I started with a joke. It was a joke that had to do with the industry I was speaking to. It was about pet sitters. Yes, I spoke for a pet sitters organization. I started out with a joke about pet sitters and my God, they laughed their ass off. And I thought maybe I should start with a joke. But it only worked because I knew these were fun people. I had already been with them at lunch. I knew they were very outgoing, very talky, very chatty. And this was a joke that had to do with their industry that was pretty darn funny. Use them judiciously. Do not just tell jokes throughout your entire talk. Humor builds relatability. Humor makes people comfortable, especially in high stress professions like law enforcement, hospital work, nurses, teachers. We all have stress. And doesn't humor make it a little bit better? I did a talk last year at the UK Hypnosis Convention. I'm also a hypnotherapist, and it was about humor and healing. When the world is in crisis, as it kind of is now, we turn to humor. This is where Abbott and Costello came from, and the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers. They were funny at a time that the world was sort of falling apart. And we turned to that, to the Charlie Chaplins and the movies that made us laugh, the Disney or the Warner Brothers cartoons, the Bugs Bunny, and we wanted a break from what's happening. So if you can use humor, doesn't make you less professional, depending on how you use it. It does make you relatable, and laughter truly is the best medicine, and it makes you human. It makes you connect with them on a way that you might not have. So if you can, if you're funny, please only try to use humor if you're funny, or make fun of yourself for not being funny. Sprinkle it throughout. If you're talking about something particularly heavy, maybe do humor after that. You've got to chart how your talk is going to go, the ups and downs of that. If you can incorporate humor throughout in spaces that help soften heavy moments, then that's going to benefit you. So if you're funny, use it. Don't stand there and be a stand-up comic. Don't get carried away with the humor. And if it doesn't land, move on. Don't beat yourself up. The next moment is going to be different. So that's everything I know after 300 plus talks worldwide about how to really make a keynote land and how to make your audience walk away transformed. But not everyone's been able to attend my talks live. So that's why I have my full stress program. Click on the video below if you want to learn about affirmations, visualization, how you can use these stress reduction techniques to improve your communication, your leadership, enhance your well-being, and walk away a better person with less reactivity and less stress. So go ahead and click that link and watch that video right now. And if you're an event organizer that would like to have me for your next event, retreat, or meeting, go ahead and click the link in the description. It'll take you right to my website where you can book a call directly with me to learn more about how I can be of service to you and your organization. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on stage.